Hello everybody, this is Dr. Kevin Connors with your second section of the Beating Chronic Lyme book. Now, I didn't tell you that these are some other books that I've written that you can download as well, but you are dealing with chronic Lyme. You are a loved one, so we want to know how to treat it. Maybe looking at it a little bit differently than you're currently looking at it is going to be very helpful. Well, in this section you're going to learn about some problems with misdiagnosis, because that is the #1 problem with chronic Lyme. If you have chronic Lyme, you either were not correctly diagnosed or not correctly treated in the acute phase. State of fact. So looking at it first, why do we have a problem in treating Lyme anyhow? Well, #1, Lyme has the ability to hide. So it hides within the cell. It has the ability to go intracellular. So viruses, the way viruses work in your body is they go intracellular in order to replicate and then kill the cell, break through the cell membrane, lysine the cell, and they have replicated multiple times. And then they go in another cell, do the same thing. When a virus infiltrates the cell, though, typically there's a little marker that comes up on the outside of the cell membrane. It's a little protein marker that tells the immune system that that cell has been infiltrated by an enemy. And then that immune system, your Th1 side of your immune system, typically a macrophage, will engulf the entire cell and destroy the virus and the cell altogether. That's how your body kills viruses. The reason why antibiotics don't kill viruses is partly because they can go intracellular like that, and antibiotics don't go intracellular. So understand you have cells and you have spaces between the cells. So that's the extracellular space between the cells. The intracellular space is inside the cell, and if something infiltrates the cell, it really can't be killed unless that marker comes outside the cell membrane so that the immune system can engulf and destroy the whole cell, sacrificing a cell to destroy the virus. Now, the problem with Lyme disease and a few other of the gram-negative bacteria is that they have the ability to go inside the cell and they disable that marker. So then the immune system cannot find it. So it can't. There's nothing telling a macrophage that that cell has been infiltrated. So that's the biggest problem with treating Lyme. And my definition of the difference between acute Lyme and chronic Lyme is as soon as a Borrelia bacteria has infiltrated one cell, it is now chronic Lyme by definition. So acute Lyme is still the bacteria is still either in the bloodstream or in the extracellular spaces. It has not yet gone intracellular. So you understand that. Acute Lyme is that Lyme, the Borrelia, is still either in the blood or in the extracellular spaces. It has not yet gone intracellular. So that's the second problem with treating Lyme, is that few people understand these stages. So when you're trying to treat chronic Lyme that has already gone intracellular, the way you treat acute Lyme with high-dose antibiotics, it seldom works unless you stay on those antibiotics for months or years, because every time the antibiotic is stopped, now that Borrelia could go extracellular again, continue to reproduce, and then hide back in the cell. You've not killed it. So the antibiotics cannot get intracellular, therefore it cannot kill that second stage and the third stage of chronic Lyme disease. So few understand those stages. And fewer still understand how to treat an autoimmune disease, especially even recognizing that maybe this is the first time you've ever heard that there is 3 stages of Lyme, or somebody defines them differently, or nobody has ever told you that the 3rd stage of Lyme is an autoimmune disorder. So that we're going to hit hard and heavy through this book. So if it's all new to you, listen to these a couple times because I think it'll help you a lot. So there's 3 phases of Lyme. Phase 1 is acute. Phase 2 is chronic, defined as one Borrelia bacteria has gone intracellular. It is now a chronic Lyme. And 3 is autoimmune, and we'll define that as we go. So in acute stage Lyme, you're going to learn that we want to treat that as soon as possible, because literally we have a window of opportunity to treat it. So acute stage Lyme is defined as the bacteria is still in the blood or in the extracellular spaces. It's in the blood or the extracellular spaces. It is still killable by an antibiotic. So you want to get that antibiotic as soon as possible, because as soon as it enters into a cell, gets through the cell membrane and goes inside the cell, it is not completely killable by an antibiotic anymore, and you have moved into a possible very chronic debilitating disorder. So you want to treat acute stage Lyme ASAP, like immediately. This is my problem with the testing that we're going to talk about in future pieces of the book. But the problem with the testing is if you have to wait at all to get the test back, and then you have a pretty good chance of it being a false negative, you may have missed the window, because literally it is a window of opportunity, and windows do one thing: they shut. Once those windows are shut, once that Lyme Borrelia has gone intracellular, you're not going to kill it with antibiotics unless you're willing to go on them a couple years and destroy everything else in your body. So you want to go to a Lyme literate doctor who's going to address your symptoms based upon a clinical picture, not based upon a blood test. So used to be back in the days of Marcus Welby that he would use gleaned information from years of wisdom or years of wisdom from his predecessors, and would be able to assess the condition like a good mechanic could used to assess a car and know, oh, that third lifter has got a problem, instead of having to throw it on a computer, etc., to be able to figure out what the problem is. So it is that we've created a field of medicine that we still call medicine, medical doctors, but really they're technicians that are basically puppets of the pharmaceutical industry, and have very difficult time making a decision. Matter of fact, many times are legally bound to not be able to make a decision unless they have some sort of blood test. That is a shame. It is just a cotton picking shame. So unfortunately, if you want to get rid of Lyme disease and you're in the acute stage, you need to go to some doctor who's got the conniptions to be able to say, you know what, this is probably Lyme. We live in a very high Lyme area. It's Lyme disease time right now. It's in the spring or early summer. You have flu-like symptoms. You have or don't have a rash. It's probably Lyme. We're going to put you on some antibiotics just to make sure. Heck, you'll know if it was Lyme disease if you go on the antibiotics and it knocks it out of you right away. So if you go on the antibiotics and it doesn't knock it out of you, then you either missed the acute phase, you already missed the window, or it might not have been a bacteria. So antibiotics tend to work quite well on Lyme disease. On gram-negative bacteria, Lyme antibiotics work quite well if you catch it while it's in the blood or the extracellular spaces. We'll hit this more and more as we go, so I don't want to take too much of your time now. But as always, call our office if you have any questions, and listen to this a couple times if you need to, and read the section. See you next section.